Hello, Reese from the Point Music Podcast thingy. Man, I'm getting some podcasts cranking of late. So this one is a funny one because of the fact that it was supposed to have happened last year. We had everything. Oh, it might have been the year before that. We had everything teed up, and we started doing the podcast, the interview, and basically their connection was rubbish, and it kept glitching and couldn't make it work. And yeah, eventually went by the wayside. But this time around, having chats with Denis from Lovelovelove or Lovelovelove, all about this whole new EP that he's brought out, now a solo project basically with a band instead of a partnership like it was before. Everything Feels Like a Movie is out now. It's 4 tracks of sort of like a merging of alt folk and bits of splatterings of indie pop in there. Great release. Got a little bit of melancholy coming through on it. So like, if you like Bon Iver and Phoebe Bridgers and that, get into this. Long time coming. Really enjoyed this chat. Ladies and gentlemen, and people of all sorts, Denis from Lovelovelove. And rolling. Okay. This is Denis from Lovelovelove from remember last time it's Lovelovelove, but a little sidetrack. There was a podcast that didn't make it, and it was basically, it was last year or something, I think it was, and
I think it was.
And your reception was just absolutely atrocious down in Byron, where you were. I think that's where you were at the time. And we tried to make things work, and it just didn't fucking work. And this time around, praise to the heavens and shit, it should be good. All right.
Love it.
Cool.
Love it.
We got you this time. All right. Denis, we're here to talk about your EP, which dropped, a week and a half ago? Nearly 2 weeks?
Yeah, roughly about a week and a half, I think. Yeah.
So Everything Feels Like a Movie. Like a movie.
It does. It does.
Does everything feel like a movie?
At the time, man, definitely did. Dude, I haven't gone through a process before where I've had to write songs top to bottom without doing some production in between. So writing the songs first and then doing all the production definitely had this weird call it a time lapse or a delay. I wrote the song, some of them I started writing 3 or 4 years before.
Yeah.
So even just looking back at it, you know what it's like, man. Your memories can be really
hazy,
visceral, and kind of lie to you sometimes as well, and make things feel more romantic than what they actually are. So, yeah, man.
So,
definitely,
this is a big change because, with the original podcast that we were supposed to do last year, you dropped the Ultraviolet EP, and you had it was this full indie pop, glossy kind of sound, and it was 2 of you as well. So you and Jared.
Yeah.
And now you've just done a full 180 and pulled out this alt folk so there's shades of Indian pop in there as well, but man, there's a lot of Elliott Smith and Bon Iver like that, just
cool.
Creeping right through, like Elliott Smith, but not in the super sad, almost unaliving kind of way, which Elliott Smith was known for. But it has that melancholy to it, I think, is probably the best term for it.
For sure.
But heavy romanticism too.
For sure, man.
So why the 180?
Yeah, I've said a lot recently, man. And I think my answer that I feel is makes the most sense, is, and for some context, I guess you're right. We were 2 dudes. We had this really great collaborative relationship and still kind of do. We're still amazing friends. But I think a big part of what we as individuals contributed was very different.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jared had this really amazing production background. I had this songwriting background. And so we kind of just met in the middle with what seemed to fit. And at the time that was obviously the indie pop thing with a little bit of indie rock sprinkled, or maybe some alt pop here and there with some alternative influences and so forth. And I think for me, that was very much a product of the collaborative relationship. The 2 of us kind of spending time together, kind of talking about the records we've heard recently and what are we connecting with, and trying to work. It's also those like formative kind of weeks and months when you're trying to like work out like what is this? Like what even? How do we even
How you bring it
make
together.
this a thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you brand it? How do you play these songs live? Like how do you do all this stuff?
Hmm.
And for me, like a lot of my early influences prior to the whole Love thing being a thing was very much like the Elliott Smith, the Bon Iver thing, and more recently the more kind of melancholic stuff that you're sort of talking about, which I think in my head is more like your Hazlitt, your Novelmore,
Phoebe
the Phoebe
Bridges.
Bridges kind of early stuff.
Yep.
Hell yeah, man. So I think for me, I had this bank of songs that was sitting there, and like, bro, like through the process of being able to kind of start the project, play some shows, get some streams up,
Hmm.
I feel like I felt a bit of a confidence to maybe revisit what I had done in the past. And then the kind of magical thing that happened was because there had been this, like I was saying before, like this kind of time warp between point A of like starting to write some of these songs and some being finished, some not being produced, and then kind of finishing them. There was like kind of just like all this magical stuff that happened in between that for me was like too hard to ignore. Like I was like, oh, this is kind of just like something beautiful. And like the other thing I keep like when I keep getting asked this question is like I'm definitely going back to indie pop world. Like it's happening.
Yeah.
It will. But I just needed, I think, like to do something different. And then maybe like another tangent of why it ended up like this was just we were working with the team before, we had like management, we had um just like different PR support and stuff.
Yep.
And so I don't know, there was just like more of infrastructure. And so that kind of lends to just being working better in a team.
So this
And
this would
this
have been
run,
more free
yeah,
for you, right?
100% so freeing. Like I did everything myself, which like we were doing a lot previously, like, and I'm so thankful that we were able to do it, but we still had help.
Hmm.
Whereas like this time, a lot of it, man, I did everything. Like even did the PR work myself, which was so scary.
Oh, PR.
Here
When
we
you do it in
are.
your
So
own.
I must be doing something right.
Oh, well, trying like I've always said, like being both an artist and someone that does PR as well as music journalism, and that, but writing about your own stuff and trying to be
Mm,
not humble. You try
mm.
because you got to sell it, right? But there's
You
this
have to,
deep
yeah.
down, you're just going, oh, but if you just want to check it out, like, I mean, you might like it instead of like just
Yeah,
being
yeah,
check
yeah,
it
yeah.
out now. This, yeah,
It's
it's
the best thing ever.
it's
Listen to it. Yeah.
it's very difficult to do, and I don't envy that job. I hate doing that job myself. I
Mm,
very rarely have
for
to do that
sure.
job anymore, which is I'm grateful for. But like if I'm doing it for someone else, piss. That's easy because
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not
For sure.
I'm not emotionally attached to that.
Yeah,
It's basically selling something that I think I believe in, but it's not mine.
for sure.
Whereas when you're
Yeah.
emotionally attached to it and it's your baby that you spent all this time in,
Mm.
of course it's going to be hard.
Oh, 100%. There's that emotional investment that's, yeah, you can't shake it. Hey,
Mm.
it's definitely like something that's just ingrained in
Plus,
it.
you're
Hey.
worried if people are going to hate it.
Oh, absolutely. That's like, dude, that was my biggest fear. It's like, oh, we've just built 2.5 years or 2 years worth of like this beautiful thing that's been kind of it's beyond what we thought it was going to be.
Mm.
And now I'm doing like a 180 on everyone. Hey man, cool. You know that awesome pop stuff we were making before? Well, guess what? I got rid of all of it, and now we're listening to sad music. You know, that
But
was like a really big part of it
I
for me.
mean, Honeymoon, which was basically the first single of this EP, that's had 150 plus thousand streams, which is more than what your previous ones have had,
Crazy.
right? So
Oh, crazy,
Stealing
crazy.
Chocolates is just under 40K, and your Beach Baby's just over 17. I mean, you must have been doing something right.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because it's hard not to like look at the numbers for validation because they are like just our reference point
It
to how
is.
things are going.
Mm.
But it is nice like coming back to statistics and being like, hey, like people actually are rewarding authenticity and that they are connecting with what I'm doing, even though it's different. So that's been a real positive, I guess.
So, all right, talk me through this whole process because you would have just come out of this whole indie pop stylings, and you like you said, you got this stuff that you were revisiting because you've written it previously.
Mm.
Was it Was it kind of a frightening kind of experience knowing that you're gonna be doing this on your own at first, and then trying to figure out how these pieces are gonna fit in your own sake?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in the beginning, I guess like just when I think about the songs, like Honeymoon wasn't the first song that I had written.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in the writing process and having these songs, and I wrote this song with Lawson Hull, and like Lawson's a bit of a veteran in the kind of indie folk space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, like when I met him in real life, we wrote it actually in Newcastle at his place, which is beautiful.
Mm.
Um, he kind of, I kind of said to him, like, this is kind of how I'm feeling. I've got some songs I kind of want to explore. I'm not really sure how I like do what I'm gonna do, like kind of some of those fears I mentioned before. And the thing that he said to me was like, no, these songs are great. Like I've been around the block. I know how these things go. And, I believe you can do it yourself. Like you just got to do it yourself. And he's like, this song is beautiful. I played him some of the other songs. I like talked to him about some of the other songs, and you're like, yeah, these songs are great as well. And I think for me, that kind of gave me a bit of confidence to actually just go with it, I
Yeah.
guess. Um, so yeah, there's a bit of fear at the start, but I think just talking to someone who was in that world, being like, "Hey, you can do this. Believe in yourself. It's great." That definitely helped. But then I think Beach Baby, like, I guess for a bit of context as well, like obviously because people don't really know what happens behind the scenes, but I like Beach Baby's actually been out for like almost 2 years on SoundCloud. And that's something people just don't know because
Yeah.
we had like been making the Lovelovelove stuff. It was in the ultraviolet kind of era.
Mm-hmm.
I got COVID in 2022, and like, no one wants to hear another COVID story, but I like got COVID, cooped up for like a week and a half, and I listened to all these super sad records, like, Forever Ago and Stranger in the Alps, and just all the iconic, like, sad indie folk stuff that you can think of. And I got better. And the first thing that I wanted to do was like, I just want to do my own version of Beach Baby.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to forget about every boring moment I spent watching Batman cartoons. And I just want to do, I just want to do a version of Beach Baby. I put it up on SoundCloud, and it didn't get any crazy response, but I did have quite a few like friendly people just be like, "Hey, I really like this. You should put it out. You should put it out." And I think like, so with Beach Baby, there was no fear because I was like, well, I already know people are going to enjoy this. And I knew that this song had already had a life of its own before my version.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I feel like that made it a little bit easier as well. I think the one where like it actually got really hard for me to like consider putting out was definitely Stealing Chocolates because of just like the melancholy of the song, the nature of the song. It's about one of Jared's relationships. So it also was like super close to home for us at the time. We actually wrote it together, which like a lot of people are shocked by because Jared was very much part of the ultraviolet era for what I was doing. And,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that music was more like, upbeat and whatever. But yeah, so Stealing Chocolates was hard. And even like putting it out, I think I still feel a little bit of like, I hope the person who it's about, I think about that. I'm like, geez, I wonder if they know it's about them. Because if they like, it's probably one person, and that person definitely, if they hear the song, knows it's about them.
Is it going to
But
be bad?
also,
Is it going to be bad if it is?
oh, I don't know if it'll be bad. I think it'll just be like, and that's like another theme of the sequence. Like, try to write extremely accurate stuff, like.
Mm-hmm.
This experience of like throwing chocolates or stealing grapes in the supermarket, like that's a real thing that these people in this story and Jared did. So like, there's no way that they don't know it's them,
Well, we're not
So
talking
we'll see.
Taylor Swift level fucking nastiness here. So
We aren't. We definitely
I
are.
think you'll be all right. All right, so the ADHD in me basically just went in two spectrums just in that conversation.
All good.
Okay, so firstly, what fucking Batman animated series were you watching?
I was watching. Oh man, I'm gonna butcher this, but it was. Is it? It's the one because there's multiple ones, right? I'm aware that there's like some super fans out there. I believe it's the one where there's Batman and there's Robin, I'm just trying to think of the title of it right now. It's Batman something.
Brave and the Bold.
Batman Forever. Oh,
Oh,
Brave and Bold. Brave and Bold. Not Batman. Yeah, Brave and Bold.
Batman
Yeah,
Forever is
Brave
the
and Bold.
movie.
Absolutely. That's the movie with Jim Carrey
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's Val Kilmer as
great
Batman.
movie.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. But yeah, Brave and Bold. That
Yep,
was the one I was watching.
yep.
Oh, amazing, amazing stuff.
Secondly, talking about like the folk scene in general, because basically this is what
Mm,
this era of your musical evolution right now is centered in, right?
mm,
And this goes back to chats I was having with Paddy from the Dregs. I'm not name dropping, but this is a conversation that we had.
for sure, for sure.
Is that the folk scene in Australia is heavily underrated,
Mm,
but overly armed. There is a lot of power behind the folk
mm,
scene. I mean, you look at like likes of the Dregs, Pierce Brothers, Ziggy Alberts, that lot
mm.
there. They can pack out like Ziggy Alberts has packed out River Stage. I mean, all these folk
Oh
acts
man.
are packing out these kind of venues. Yeah, it just I feel like mainstream, particularly, don't really pay that much attention to it unless it's like really grabbed hold of it. So like,
Yes. Yeah. Right.
but the crowds that they get are absolutely insane. So it is a slightly underground kind of movement,
Mm,
which it doesn't deserve to be because of the amount of traction that it has. So I think what I'm trying to get here, because you're coming from both the indie pop sort of side, which has a lot of favoritism to it from the national broadcaster, but you also coming
mm.
in from this old folk thing, which is a completely like we said before, 180, which doesn't get
Yeah.
the attention. It's very nichey, but I find that if you stuck with the folky sort of stuff and went a little bit harder on it, you probably
Yeah.
go a
Yeah.
bit bigger than what you would with the indie pop stuff.
Yeah. Thanks, man. That's nice. Interestingly enough, like, and I'm maybe it's my ADHD right now as well, but like you named a few of those people. It's like when I think back to when I first started making music before Love, and like when I had all these are the guys that like I'm inspired by on a local level. Like I want to watch Ziggy Alberts play to 40 people in Brisbane in like 20, God knows what, 2017 or something.
Oh,
Like,
it would have been earlier
you
than
know,
that.
like, and
Yeah,
yeah, maybe even 2015.
yeah,
Like, like, and for me, those guys, what I really agree with what you're saying. It's like there seems to be this real powerhouse of acts, and I've been lucky enough to play in the band with Sam from This New Light, who's opening for a bunch of the boys, and like sort of been lucky enough to get to meet a couple of the guys, Ziggy and yeah, it's just all these guys like that you were mentioning before, and what's so beautiful about it is like rarely will you play a show with these guys where they're not available beforehand just to talk. They're
yeah,
just lovely dudes, and the music's very wholesome. A lot of them are like really taking that DIY approach, which I'm a huge fan of. A lot of them aren't signed to majors, and like you're right, they're packing out these incredible shows, and yeah, they aren't necessarily getting all that much attention, which like is a bit of a bummer. But maybe I'll throw a spanner in the works and say like I feel like the indie folk scene in like Australia and particularly that seems to have a presence around the sunny coast and so forth. Like
mm.
it seems to be kind of categorized differently to the folk music that we think about overseas, right? Like
Yeah, completely.
we kind of like to think of folk like in the US or UK context as being far more related to
Like a Celtic kind of
like
thing.
yeah, that or there's this misconstrued like folk pop world as well that's very like you say like, oh, what's someone like Lizzie McAlpine? You'd be like, oh, that's a folk act. But
Hmm.
in many ways it's like it's not really the same folk act that we're talking about that we've got here.
Mm.
Um
Oh,
and
Australia
so for
definitely
me
has
that
its own flavour of
yeah,
folk. Yeah,
for sure, for sure. And I love it. Like I think that's almost what I'm getting at. It's like couldn't agree more that these boys are working hard and I love the energy, I love the wholesomeness and the community factor is crazy too. Like
mm.
these guys will hang around for hours talking to people and you won't see that in the indie pop scene often. So um Kudos to those guys, man. They're smashing
Yeah, your time will come. If, like I said, if you keep pushing this sort of style here, you never know, man. Take your own spin on it.
it. Thanks, man. I'm definitely won't be shying away from it. I think I've opened the door to it too now, which is nice as well. You know, like I don't feel like I have to go a certain direction, which
Yeah.
is relieving for me. So for sure.
Yeah, like, you're talking to someone that plays in like multiple bands in all different genres, so you'd never pigeonhole yourself. Otherwise, you just get stuck in a
For
rut.
sure.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
So with the EP being only 4 tracks, did you have like a whole body of work that you basically had to narrow down to these 4?
Um, from a writing point of view, yes. Um, like I said, like a lot of these, I don't know, like a lot of the kind of songs that I had in the bank,
Mm.
like I said, was some of them were like, I think the oldest song, Everything Feels Like a Movie, the title track, I wrote that song in 2017, like most of it in 2017. So I also, as you can imagine, like over the years, you just compile songs and songs and songs. Um, I had to do a lot of filtering. So I want to say I probably had about 7
Mm.
that I were like maybe about, but none were produced. Like none of them had any production work. So I think for me, I kind of tend to do this on projects. I tend not to kind of like overcommit in a production sense. Like, I think the songwriter in me is always like, no, these are the songs. So
Mm.
for me, if I kind of connect to the songwriting part of it, then I'm like, okay, these are the songs. We'll go and produce them. Like, I don't have that many sessions on my computer that are, you know, I've got random ideas and stuff, but I don't have that many that are like written and not produced.
So
Because if they
basically,
get to the
sketches.
production stage, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So if they're like, yeah, so I think, yeah, I had about 7 of them in total, and yeah, narrowed it down to the 4. And I probably would have had some different songs on there had I not made the trip to Newcastle to go write and see Lawson and write Honeymoon, and then that kind of like, yeah, Stealing Chocolates was already kind of written by then.
Mm.
Um, yeah, and Everything Feels Like a Movie was kind of half written, and I kind of love the idea of it being written like, you know, 5 or 6 years ago and then finishing it off. So yeah, just had the 4 in the end.
So what now?
Yeah, man, that's the thing I keep asking myself. I think it's so funny because I tend to go through these really seasonal
Mm.
creative patches. I feel like I could pick up a guitar and write a song tomorrow, but I don't know that that song would be. I wouldn't connect with it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of like a
You feel like you're
yeah.
forcing it?
So it's yeah, forcing it and kind of relying on the skill set, not the creative energy.
Mm.
But yeah, so at the moment, I think Head's kind of just like in this kind of interesting space with the tour that we're on at the moment because we're kind of doing like half support acts or mostly support act shows, um, and then kind of doing like a big headliner, and then I'm waiting to hear back from a bunch of other agencies about a bunch more shows. Like I feel I'm actually scared it's going to turn into one of those things where like you get a bunch of dates, people see that you've got dates, so they want to put you on, and then you get more dates, and then you just end up like
Yeah.
just
Just
non-stop
steamrolls.
doing shows.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of trying to find the line there, but yeah, at the moment, like Head's just in like the tour game at the moment. Got a bit of a different band set up, so we're still kind of tuning that up. It feels like it's pretty much there, but just got a couple more shows to come up, so just really working on that. And I think, yeah, just for me, oh man, like trying to take these folk songs and integrate them into the set with a bunch of pop songs is also a bit of a challenge. So that's where my head's at. Yeah.
So what's the live setup for you guys then?
Yeah, at the moment we're running just as a 3 piece for like support shows.
Yep.
We've got a drummer slash he's kind of like my MD tracks rig guy, you
Okay.
know, just does all the prod stuff for me. James Rhodes, awesome dude, such a legend. And then one of our other friends, Sam Cockgrove, plays bass.
Mm-hmm.
Just really good kind of jazz trained guys, really well versed in music theory, and then I just play rhythm and then sing my little heart out, and then we've got tracks to kind of back up what I'm doing, but we tend to keep the tracks rigs fairly like minimal. Like if someone can play it, get someone to play it, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of the setup at the moment, and it's working well.
Well, if we're from a touring perspective, it's probably the better thing to do is run like that, like keep it minimal as possible, right?
Yeah, 100%. Cuts the cost down. Also,
Yeah.
just like we're traveling, like it just yeah. I think when we do like a big headline show in June, like I'll definitely push to play with a four.
Hmm.
And then one. I know you're a big fan of the Juno crew. Ash, who plays with Juno,
Hmm.
he played the sax solo on Golden for us. So
Ah, right.
um, yeah, the man, absolute man. So he's gonna tag along for that one, and I think probably jump up for a couple of songs and hopefully rip that solo. So yeah, it's quite funny when we play the set now because the saxophone solo is in the tracks, and it's always the last song that we play. It's really funny when I have to kind of you know you play and there's no sax player, but the energy is really high. I always have a little giggle to myself.
So basically, like the older tracks of Love, 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 have you given them a more of a folky kind of bent, or are they basically verbatim?
No, they're pretty verbatim. I think if anything, what's kind of happening is the folk songs are kind of getting. I wouldn't call them an upgrade. They're just getting a bit of a thickening.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Honeymoon, for example, like there is an electric guitar throughout the whole song, but it's really muted and kind of quiet. Lives in the background. It's more of something you feel than something you hear. So it's kind of been nice, particularly with the outro section on Honeymoon being so kind of intense and um not intense, but just big sounding. It's been actually really nice to kind of throw an electric guitar in the mix and um yeah, so yeah, they're pretty verbatim, but I feel like the folk songs are getting a bit of a shift up, which is an
A
interesting
bit more energy at them.
thing. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure.
because I think it's the actual everything feels like a movie track. That's the one that's like just you and guitar, right?
Just me on guitar, man, nothing to hide
So
behind.
does that get a reworking, or is that basically gives the other guys a break and you just do that?
I think we've kind of been in a situation where we haven't had to play it because we've been playing a lot of supports, but
Oh,
and just with set length and that sort of stuff.
yeah, true.
But I think for me, like when we do get to this headline show coming up, I definitely think we'll kind of split the show down the middle, and there'll be like a bunch of the older stuff, bunch of the upbeat stuff, and then in the middle there'll be this really beautiful time where I think, yeah, I will just kind of get up and do my very best to kind of like just play a guitar and have nothing hide behind, and even just like a song like Everything Feels Like a Movie, and then even just one of the on the EP we had like a really stripped song called Highway. I think it'd be really nice to give those two songs a bit of a moment,
Mm.
and give the boys a break, and then we can kind of kick back off again into the other stuff and maybe a couple of new ones that we haven't put out. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. What do you think? Is that something like
Well,
you'd love to see from somebody?
they're the storytelling moments, right? So,
Sure.
uh, point in case, case in point. Sorry. When I went and saw Sahara Beck play a couple of months ago on her album launch up here. Well, I'm not on the sunny coast anymore, but on the sunny coast, she had a full band, well, relatively full band, with it as well as tracks.
Yeah.
But when it came to sort of more sort of poignant bits, yeah, she did some storytelling and stripped right back. And yeah, it is more effective in that sort of sense because it gives like you said, gives the other guys a bit of a breather, gives you a chance to maybe create some kind of connect with the audience,
For
particularly
sure.
given it's your headline show. And those little moments there, sometimes it can be like, oh, I'm gonna go get a fucking drink from the bar while you're talking shit. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but sometimes it's worthy, like if
yeah,
it
for
does create the
sure.
connect. Oh, it's your fuck show.
No, no, man. I love asking because I think I tend to be that guy who's like, all right, I'm gonna go to the. Yeah, it's just because I'm a musician. You'd get it. You're like, oh, they're doing their thing. I'm gonna go get a drink. But
Mm-hmm.
it'd be real. On that note, though, it'd be really interesting to see who rocks up at the shows. I feel like there may be this kind of interesting division of like the people who are really there for the folk songs and the people. We'll see, man. It'll be a
I don't
really
think it'd be
interesting one.
division, man. I don't think it at all would be like that.
Cool. Well,
Uh,
that's good then. It's like everyone's on the same train. Great.
but what? Since you're talking about it, now's the time to plug it.
Hell yeah. Well, June 1st, my man, in Brizzy.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to be there. Put
Oh,
you on the door. You let
yeah,
me know.
yeah. Which venue?
And yeah, Black Bear Lodge,
Ah,
the
okay.
old faithful, iconic.
Yeah,
And hopefully the next time we play in Brizzy, it'll be at a bigger venue with some more seats.
I was
But
talk.
people have to rock up for that, so let's do it.
I was talking to. There was a band I did a podcast with earlier this week at Lestiel. Well, the previous podcast 81 for those people listening or watching. And they're from Newcastle, and they're doing their first trips up here, and they're playing Black Bear Lodge, and they don't know about the staircase. So I was.
Oh, dude.
See, you're
You know
getting
what's
it.
funny? Dude, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like,
Yep.
dude, I reckon that staircase has claimed the ankles of about half of Brisbane's music scene.
I just said to make sure the bass player packs light, and like, because I remember taking a 4x10 cab up the back of that, and I would never do it
Dude.
ever again.
Dude, I think the show we just played the other day with Shannon James, she was saying, or maybe one of the members of their band was saying the exact same thing. So when you just brought it up, I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
It
Yeah, man.
seems to be a rite of passage for anyone that plays in Brisbane or anyone
Yeah,
coming up
yeah.
the Brisbane
Oh,
scene. If
yeah.
you're playing Black Bear Lodge, that's it. You got to do the lug up the back.
Oh, it's the worst.
Oh man! All right, hit the half-hour mark, so I'll wrap things up now. Dennis,
Beautiful.
it's been good to actually properly, instead of like glitchy chat with you like last time. We actually got through it. The EP is great, man. Everything Feels Like a Movie is out now. I'll link it in this podcast, so and share it in that.
Thank you, man.
Good luck, because you're playing. I know this podcast won't go live until after the show is, but you're playing the 26th, so tomorrow night in Sydney.
This is actually hot off the press. We will not be playing in Sydney anymore.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah, we had some stuff come up with the boys in the band, so it's not going to happen anymore. But the next show is May 4th at the Bright Side with Charlotte Sands in Brizzy. So
Very good.
that'll be a big one.
That will be a big one. All right, man. And hang on the line here. And it's been awesome chatting to you. Everyone else, adios.
So, yeah.
Big ups to Denis. And we had chats afterwards too. So, and stuff that it's nice to have some feedback, which is really cool. So big love to Denis for that. Big love. Do check out the EP, Everything Feels Like a Movie, and if you do check out the EP and you go, you know what, this is cool, I'd like to see this, June 1st at Black Bear Lodge, their headline show, and yeah, in Brisbane, so do check that out. I've got more coming up, as I have been saying in the past, but legit, it's getting backed up a little bit, so I'm probably gonna have to take a little break from podcasting for a little while to get over this stuff. It's pretty hectic, but enjoy it. That's it for me for now. Thank you for supporting local music, live music, Australian music, all sorts of music. You guys are legends. Cheers.